Hi, everybody. I'm back again, and thanks for your patience. Uh, Again, we're excited to have you here. My name is Dana Hillman. I'm Vice President of Sales for Invisinet, and we're really excited to have you here at our launch. So today, we're going to be hearing from two favorite people of mine, Steve Pickett and Max Garuzzo. To give you a little background on each of the people that you'll be hearing from today, Steve Pickett is our CEO. And aside from being the heartbeat of our company and the father of two wonderful daughters, he is an accomplished person in technology. So currently, he's our CEO, but he's also a co-founder of Tabia, which is a medical software company. And previously, he's held very senior positions, CEO of RigNet and Telmar. RigNet he sold to Viasat. Prior to that, he was with one of the larger companies called Alcatel and responsible for over $700 million in revenue. So we're excited to have Steve here today to walk through what Invisinet can actually do and how we do it. Additionally, I'm really excited to have one of my good friends, Max Garuzzo, joining us today. So Max is a PhD in cybersecurity and also leads ISCS, which is one of the more prominent companies, consulting firms in Europe and the Middle East for cybersecurity. So in that capacity, Max consults with some of the largest telecoms, some of the largest government agencies, as well as military, in addition to some of the largest enterprise customers. So Max is a smart guy and can't stick to one thing. He's also co-founder of a company called Smart Hero, which uses AI to help protect lone workers in the field. More importantly, what I'm really excited about is the fact that Max is a certified ethical hacker. So what Max is going to do is take us through the playbook of how a hacker actually prepares to attack your network, what tools they employ, and then how they go about doing it. But more importantly, he's going to share why he's so excited about Invisinet and how that can actually help break that playbook. So I'll stop talking now, but without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Steve. And again, thank you all very much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Dana, and thank you for the very generous introduction. I also want to thank everyone who's joined our webinar today. We appreciate you tuning in. Before we review the agenda, I thought it might be helpful for me to highlight something that we won't talk about during the webinar today. We won't talk about existing security solutions and how we might be able to simply offer these solutions in a better, faster, or cheaper way. Instead, we'll be introducing an entirely new way of protecting your network that will stop hackers at the very first stage of their attack, during reconnaissance. You'll hear through the course of the webinar, network scanning is simple to do and is a foundational way that hackers use to gather information about how networks are built. That information helps enable bad actors to do network reconnaissance, which is what leads to network infiltrations. Up to now, there have not been technology solutions available that can prevent such unauthorized reconnaissance. Today, you'll learn about a solution that was originally designed for the Department of Defense that can indeed block all unauthorized network scanning and therefore deliver a whole new level of cyber protection. It literally adds invisibility, as the name would suggest, or cloaking to your arsenal of tools that combat cyber attackers. It's meaningful because hackers can't attack what they can't see. So let me move to the agenda slide, and we'll start by outlining the problem itself. And to expand on that just for a moment here, that the problem is rooted in the fact that in spite of the enormous sums of money being spent on cybersecurity technologies, the frequency and the costs associated with cyber attacks continue to grow. Clearly, There must be a need for something new. Next, we'll spend some time hearing from Dr. Max Garuzzo as he talks about exactly how hackers leverage the information that's gathered from network scanning in order to successfully penetrate networks. After that, we'll provide a review of the Invisinet solution itself, and we'll spend some time looking at different ways to deploy the solution, by the way, which is purely software, and we'll look at some early use cases in business applications. We'll wrap up with information about how to learn more about this capability that's now available to non-military organizations in many parts of the world. The struggle is real. Let's look at some facts and figures that highlight the ongoing cybersecurity risks that all of us face. First, 84% of companies found high-risk vulnerabilities in their networks last year. In many cases, these vulnerabilities have lingered for months and in some cases even for years. And that highlights the old adage that there are two types of companies in the world today: those who have been hacked and those who will be hacked. In 2022, there were over 100 million attacks against edge devices specifically. And it might not be a surprise to see how many attacks are targeted at the edge when you consider that it's often the edge where you have the least amount of cybersecurity protection. And remember, networks themselves are as weak as their weakest link, meaning there needs to be an increased focus on protecting and even hiding these vulnerable parts of the network. And finally, in terms of cloud, the race to the cloud has been simply remarkable. But the reality is we're still in the early days of cloud adoption. And in spite of that, 80% of organizations experienced a serious cloud incident in 2021. And as many of us know, the cloud is constantly being scanned by bots built in various parts of the world that are hunting for exposed cloud assets. Hiding these assets from potential bad actors needs to be a priority when protecting both existing cloud infrastructure and when turning up new cloud assets. Let's talk a little more about network scanning specifically. And specifically why you should care that network scanning is a tool that can be used by almost anyone around the world, regardless of whether they're authorized or not. And so to answer this question, it's important to know what kinds of information can be gathered by a bad actor who's using network scanning to do reconnaissance. As you see here, IP addresses and host names can be visible through network scanning, as are any open firewall ports. Determining specific IP addresses of assets and determining the type of traffic to and from them allows hackers to focus their attack, increasing the likelihood of a breach. Operating systems used and user account information can also be gleaned from network scanning, along with a general understanding of network architecture in both application and service vulnerabilities. Determining an asset's OS and its version can be key, as hackers often conduct scattershot attacks, attempting to leverage a known vulnerability rather than target a specific asset. Once the OS is known, the ability to exploit a known vulnerability, which may not yet have been sealed off, is significantly increased. And again, Max will highlight exactly how hackers use this information to do reconnaissance and then ultimately penetrate networks. Let's talk about the underlying problem. The TCP IP protocol enables network scanning. For those who aren't aware, that protocol was defined 50 years ago, and it's been deployed for over 40 years. And it was created for communication, not for security. When you consider how dependent we all are on the power of networking, right? We take it for granted today. We see that TCP IP has certainly done its job in terms of being able to deliver connectivity and then support data transfer. But That comes with the inherent vulnerability associated with network scanning that is enabled by TCP/IP. The symptoms of these vulnerabilities, in some cases, are partially dealt with by existing cybersecurity technologies, but none of them actually cure the underlying problem, or, continuing with the medical metaphor, cure the disease. All known security solutions attempt to either detect, thwart, or stop an attack, but they do this after the attack has already started, or sometimes even after it's ended. There's no known solution other than Invisinet's that can prevent the attack from ever taking place. And the problem itself is getting bigger, given how quickly networks are growing, particularly at the edge and in the cloud. As this attack surface expands, we put even more pressure on a very scarce resource, that resource being our cybersecurity professionals, who have a tough time even today keeping up with the pace of attacks that are out there. Imagine finally being able to reduce the size of the attack surface by making parts of the attack surface invisible to bad actors and keeping them from being able to do the reconnaissance that's often step one in executing a cyber attack. At least one well-regarded technology journal highlights the ongoing risk of cyber attacks when pointing out that 80% of today's cybersecurity budgets cover only 20% of the attack surface. And Dana, maybe you can move to the next slide. Sorry, one back. Yeah, so this is the one I was referring to. So indeed, a very well-regarded journal highlights that budgets cover only 20%. 80% of the spend covers only 20% of the attack surface. So clearly, the cybersecurity spend needs to be optimized in order to more effectively cover a much larger percentage of the network. And clearly, there needs to be an increased focus on both edge and cloud. From here, let me turn the microphone over to Max, who's not just an ethical hacker and a PhD in cybersecurity, but he's also a friend and a business leader whose day job includes helping companies around the world identify cyber risks, eradicate bad actors from networks, and recover from attacks. He has firsthand knowledge of the importance of being able to transition from detecting attacks to preventing attacks. So Max, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you for having me here, and thanks to all the audience, because we are very, very excited to have the opportunity. We are honored to stay here with all of you to aware the others, all the audience, about some informations that are not so clear all over the internet. So now we talk about the technologies and how the hackers works against our companies and against the companies that we defend. So today we will see the hackers playbook. This does mean that today I go you through the way in which we can gather information, not all the ways because are a lot, and we will see only a top of them, and we see how to start building a specialized vector of attack against a target that we have chosen, and in which way we can choose a specific attack and a specific target. And finally, how we can do escape detection and escape evasion, that are very, very important to understand that all the things that we put in place in this moment to defend our precious companies and all the other companies that we serve cover only 20% of the attack surfaces. This is very, very important. So let me share just a second my screen. Okay. Okay, then I think that you are able to see my screen. And then let me start from the beginning of the story, just because everyone must be aware about one fact that is very, very important. Only the 4% of the contents that are on the internet are the content that we are able to Google or to Yahoo or everything in between. This does mean that there is a 96% of the contents that we can't Google, but we can reach them. And then as Steven told you before, there are some scrapers, there are some crawlers, tons of them, millions of them that are day and night taking information from our firewalls. They take all this information, and they put them over the internet. All this kind of information are taken also from the bad actors to produce some news that we can find on the dark web. That is this part. But we can reach out with a new ways that I will show you just in a bit. But it's very, very important to understand that when I have to choose a target, first of all, and we will see in a bit why, I can find a lot of information inside the dark web. I can find information about my company. I can find information about your companies. If you want to stop, to give to the others the opportunity to collect information and to put them inside the dark web, you have to use Invisinet, just because Invisinet is the only one in this market in this moment that prevent, in the very early stage, the opportunity to reach something that is behind Invisinet. So in this way, it's impossible to find information. I mean, that if my company is not using Invisinet, I give to the others the opportunity to collect information. When from the day zero, from the second zero, I switch on Invisinet, it's impossible to detect everything, and then it's impossible to collect information. But it's important also to know if it's real that there are tons of bad guys that are all around the world and that are working against us. Yes, it's true. This is only this chart give you the opportunity to know something about the names, only about the names of the prominent hackers group that are all around the world. There are tons of them. And immediately jump in my mind, why these guys want to do what they are doing every day? Why hackers X? Okay, this is a very good question, and the answers is also good. These guys are doing this for financial reasons, for fun ideology reasons, and also for espionage. In this chart, in this pattern, you can see in a very easy way about all the different kind of industries that we have on the market. Here we have only the patterns, which is the motive of the attacks. For example, for the manufacturing, we can see that 99% of the motive is the espionage. In healthcare, there is for financial, because they grab the information from the servers and then they sold them, or they ask for the money to the hospitals and something in between. So seeing this chart, we understand that there are a lot of groups of attackers, of bad guys, and they have different reasons to go against the companies. And the reasons are these. And they are a lot. But in which way these guys are able to take all this kind of information? Okay, there are a lot of a lot of ways to take this kind of information. But now I show you very, very simple ways in which I can find information about my company, information about your companies, and everything in between. For example, this is the OSINT framework. It's a very well-known one. And let me explain exactly to you that everything that I'm showing to you is done to serve and to protect all the companies. But in any case, just because it is exposed on the internet, can be used also from the bad guys. This is the reality, because we have to keep in mind that the bad guys master all the information and master all the techniques that I master, that my team master. And this is why we are so proud to have the opportunity to spread out Invisinet technology, because it's a game changer. is a different way of seeing the stuff. Let me prove it to you. Using the OSINT framework, for example, if I want to find something on the dark web, as I told you before, I find immediately in which way I can find all of them. I have all the tools that I need to have inside my toolbox to grab all the information. And just because I am an hacker, an ethical hacker, of course, for me, it's very, very important, the IP address. And then, as you can see, for me, doing host and port discovery is very, very important in my job. Here are exactly all the tools that I have to use. So let me show to you, for example, the difference with and without Invisinet. Okay, as you can see here, there is Shodan. As you can see here, it's Shodan. I have used Shodan against this IP that is owned by me, and then I can do it. I can show everything about it. As you can see in this chart, using Shodan, I can see more or less everything about this kind of target, because I can see the open ports, I can see the web technologies that are used inside this website in this case, I can see a lot of informations that I can use against the target. But if I use Invisinet, because behind this IP, there is a server, this is the result. No result found using the same Shodan. This is why it's so important to take in consideration to use Invisinet, because Invisinet is the only way that gives you the opportunity to hide completely something that is behind a public or a private IP. So just having decided which kind of tools I have to use, and I have doing information gathering using everything that I can find inside the dark web, or using all the techniques that I can use, I have to prepare the vector of attack against the target. So again, I think, or do you think that the bad guys have to start from scratch to prepare all of them? No, no, no. We have tons of material that we can use. For example, this is a very precious place where to find things that you can use to defend ourselves, to defend our companies, to defend all the companies that we serve. Just because inside here, we can find a lot of vector of attack. Let me prove it to you. For example, about the reconnaissance, that is the first part, I remember you, that is the first step of the cybersecurity kill chain. I use one of these. Let me open this one, and immediately I can find it, the explanation and the way in which I can do the mitigation. Of course, because these places are done for the good guys, are done for the guys that are working inside the IT teams to serve themselves and to protect themselves. But tell me, just a second, just because I have more or less 30 years of career behind my shoulders, and then I have talked with tons of IT teams, and only in more or less 1% of the cases, I have found out that inside the IT teams, there is a guy or more than one that continuously open each one of them one by one, try it against themselves, and then do the mitigation. The reality is that this kind of stuff is used in a very simple way from the bad guys against our companies. This is the reality. And this is why when there is a prepared bad actors that want to target a company, normally 100% enter inside the company. Also, if we have ADR, also if we have firewall and everything in between. Just because, for example, as you can see here, we have 42 techniques of defense evasion. 42 techniques. This does mean that if I try all of them, I will find a way to enter. Also, if I use an ADR or if I use a firewall, this is the reality. And using Invisinet, there is a change of mind because the paradigm is completely different. Let me prove it to you. Okay, as you can see here, there is an Nmap, and as you can see here, there is the Shodan that I have used before. So Let me start with the Nmap just for a second. And as you can see, using my Nmap against this IP, I can find the ports that I can see here. Okay, it's very, very simple. 4 ports. Here I have just found that there are open ports. And then also, if I ping it, I'm able to find that is everything, that is something behind this IP. Okay, so let me try to do the same stuff against the server that is behind Invisinet. And let me do the same doing the ping. Okay, it's very, very simple. As you can see here, there is a host down. There is a host down, guys. This does mean that the mindset is completely different. If I don't use Invisinet, I can find informations. I can do information gathering on the dark web. I can find all the information. I can prepare something having the information that I can find into the dark web. And I can use also the Nmap, also using the ping, everything you want, just because I can use all of this stuff to prepare all the information and to prepare everything I have to prepare using one of them to enter and to compromise the net that I have targeted. Using, on the other end, using Invisinet, what I find is a host down. If I ping, for example, the same one, as you can see, timeout. There is nothing, in my opinion, behind that IP address. This is what the bad guys, this is what the guys that want to do, to take information and to enter to compromise the servers found, host down. This is why we have to take in consideration this beautiful technology, because it's the one that gives us the opportunity, using Invisinet from the second zero. When I switch on Invisinet, I immediately go out from the radar, immediately. Only the guys that are part of my protected enclave has the opportunity to find the servers that are behind Invisinet. For all the other guys, the response is host down. This does mean that also the information that in this moment are on the dark web will get old in a few months. And this does mean that in a few months, all the guys, all the bad guys that want to take the information to prepare something, they find that they are old. And in my job, it's impossible to use all the information because they are not more interesting for me. I pass to another one. So this is another side effect that we have using Invisinet. So this is the whole story. And then let me stop sharing in this moment. And I give the floor back to my friend, Steven.
Great. Sorry, it took me a moment there to get off of mute. But you know, let me spend a couple of. First of all, thank you, Max. That was just fantastic. Let me spend a little time talking about the origins of Invisinet, and I know the slides will catch up here in just a moment. First of all, I think it's important to point out that the intellectual property that underpins this software-based solution that's available today from Invisinet was originally used to design a solution for the U.S. Department of Defense. The problem that the DoD endeavored to solve was related to how information gathered from network scanning by our enemies could help them in the physical world. When we deployed troops and equipment into Afghanistan, and that's Afghanistan on the left-hand side of the chart here. In some cases, we used the existing cellular network, and so did our enemy. And as a result of that, the enemy could use basic network scanning to gather information that would allow them to estimate things like troop strength. And that could allow them to more intelligently plan their attacks. By the way, today we see the same type of problems related to the commercial risks that Gartner often speaks about in terms of cyber physical security. The physical risks we should be concerned about are related to what could happen to mechanical devices or to control systems that are connected to the network that ultimately are compromised by those who are wishing to do harm. This brings the threat of cyber attacks from the realm of cybersecurity to the realm of physical safety. Think in terms of critical infrastructure risks associated with a bad actor changing the chemical mix that's used in water purification systems, or the risk of something malicious in the world of upstream oil and gas being done, or the risks associated with control systems being compromised on the electric grid. Some people refer to this Invisinet cyber physical security capability as a virtual air gap. If we move to the next slide, let me talk specifically about this breakthrough approach. As we've highlighted, TCP is to enable connectivity. It's not designed for security. To say it more simply, it answers all calls. And once answered, the bad actors can find ways to penetrate the network and then ultimately move laterally to look for higher value targets within the network. We've identified a way to create first packet authentication by inserting a cryptographic hash, think of it as a virtual token, that uses identity at the session initiation phase of TCP. This is a patented scheme that's also used to secure UDP protocols, by the way. We tend to focus primarily on TCP because it's so broadly deployed, but we do have patents around protecting UDP as well that most of you certainly know are often used in video-based networks. And by the way, by doing this in the very first packet, it means that we've been able to provide protection at the earliest possible moment, and we can provide that protection using identity. That means that the destination, that is the asset that the communication is attempting to reach, is only accessed successfully when the initiator of the communication is authorized. And it makes that destination completely invisible to anybody who isn't authorized to contact it. So let me dig a little more deeply here with you. As we've highlighted, right, I'm sorry, I think I just lost my place here. Let's take a closer look at how we do this. Within the very first packet, the TCP protocol calls for the creation of what is an initial sequence number. This initial sequence number, per the standard, is a random number. We simply replace the random number with a cryptographically hashed combination of identity and network time. This is done using software at the point of origin. And then at the point of destination, software is installed on a virtual gateway and essentially looks for the virtual token that we call a TAC ID. And if the TAC ID exists at that point of destination, the software allows the connection to the endpoint, and the network connection is established as designed by TCP. But if the TAC ID is not found, the request is simply ignored, as you saw Max just demonstrate. And that results in no exchange of information. The call is essentially not answered now. And the requester, in this case, the bad actor, again, as you saw Max demonstrate, simply sees a timeout. And so that first packet authentication literally stops reconnaissance in its tracks. Let me spend a couple of minutes just highlighting architecturally how this would be deployed. So the next slide is going to look at some general deployment architecture, and both Max and Dana are going to expand on these by looking at some early, very specific use cases in business. But prior to that, let's look more generically at these diagrams. The diagram on the left shows that the trusted user has software installed on their device, in this case a PC or a Linux device. And by the way, that software is a simple driver. It basically acts like a printer driver, if you will. And that's what modifies the very first TCP packet in order to substitute that initial sequence number with a TAC ID. And then, as you see at the bottom of this very first column, there's a virtual gateway deployed running our software that looks for that TAC ID. If the TAC ID is present, as I've communicated, the software passes the request to the point of destination and the connection is established. If not, then the request is simply dropped. As you move from left to right, looking at these different deployment architectures, you see some alternative deployment scenarios. The virtual gateway that I just mentioned in the far left column can be deployed at either end of that network connection. So it can both apply enforcement looking for the TAC ID, or it can generate the TAC ID as well. So you could have a collection of devices at the point of origin that are all essentially where all the traffic is aggregated into this virtual gateway, and that's where the TAC ID would be inserted. So if we move to the next slide, Dana. This is a quick look at the comparison of Invisinet versus other security capabilities that are available. I'm not going to spend time going through this in detail, but suffice it to say, Invisinet provides an added level of security that uniquely prevents cyber attacks. Foundationally, by the way, it's zero trust. It doesn't trust anything that's coming in unless it finds the token that essentially says this is an authorized user, and therefore a scan could take place and a network connection could be made. I think it's also important for me to point out that this level of security is simple and it's certain. A request to access a network is either authorized or it's not. There's no need for complex algorithms that operate after the fact and constantly need to be updated that are looking for bad behavior of those who have already connected to the network. So because this solution is only related to that first TCP packet, I think it's also important to note that it's a very light implementation and the latency itself is quite negligible. So with that, let me pause again and hand the mic back to Max and Dana, who will talk about specific use cases for the technology. But remember, this is a horizontal solution that protects TCP or UDP-based networks in any industry. So Max and Dana, back to you.
Thank you, Steve. And then let me say thank you, just because we have a very huge testimonial. It is a friend of mine. It's Alessandro, the technical leader of Particle. Particle is one of our resellers, and we are very, very proud to have the opportunity to work with these guys, because they are huge, they are very, very pervasive in their customers, and they take care about cybersecurity services just because they are cybersecurity service provider, and they work with a lot in different industrial platforms, and they are very excited to use Invisinet, as you can see in this chart, because they have the opportunity to do something different and something that is quite unknown and definitely unknown to the bad guys. This is very, very important, because now we go through, with my friend Dana, we go through to very specific use cases, because I think that all the theory is very, very important, and is better to understand and to be aware how the bad guys are working. But once we have understood that using this very beautiful technology, we are able to hide, we are able to put under a veil of invisibility everything that is behind a public or a private IP, we can use all this stuff to protect very different kind of companies in different kind of market. This is huge, because the fantasy is the only limit. And then now we are here to share with you 3 different use cases. We have tons of use cases thanks to all the companies, all the resellers and the distributors we have the honor to work with. But today, just because it's a matter of time, we share with you only 3. And then let's jump in and start with the supermarket. In this case, we are talking about a chain of supermarket, more or less 120 locations in Italy, and not only in Italy, but in this case, we are talking about the chains that is located in Italy. So let me talk about the part that for me is the core part, that are the attack surfaces that are in every store. And there are a lot of them, just because we are talking about the cash register, the cameras, the fire alarm systems, ATM, post, you name it. And just because they have a giant supply chain, they have to talk with a lot of companies. Moreover, they work with the people. This does mean that they are obliged to put in place all the things that they have to put in place to serve and to defend all these people. All this stuff together give to the attackers a giant attack surface. In which way I can defend the most important part of the supermarkets? Just because if you think about just a second to it, which is the most important part? It's the part that give to the supermarket the opportunity to take money home. And then we are talking about the selling point. Okay. In a very simple way, we have taken all the selling points and to put them out of the radar immediately. In which way? Using the technology that before my friend Steven showed to you. Then we have used the Invisinet and put in an Invisinet just between the router and the firewall in each selling point. We have given only to the headquarter the opportunity to talk and to reach the selling point. So in a blink of an eye, we have taken all the selling points and put all of them out of the radar. Then the solution in this case is gateway to gateway. Very, very simple. One gateway into the headquarter, one gateway in each selling point, and this is a protective enclave. So we have taken the important part, the part that is taking money from the people because they are selling point, and we have put them out of the radar. And then to be able to prevent the store shutdown and then the consequent loss of revenue and the reputation is the most important thing that we have given to these guys in a very, very simple way. Just because it's very, very simple to deploy Invisinet. Thank you, my friend. So we go through another use case, but is more important. Also, this is very, very important because this is a manufacturing. This is a pharmaceutical manufacturing. In this case, we are talking about a company that has 15 plants worldwide. They are very, very huge. And the attack surfaces, just because we are in manufacturing, are OT of drug production in this case, but in any case, OT, and all the servers that contain the secrets of the company. In this case, we are talking about the receipt for the drugs. And I don't know if you know, but when they are in production, they physically unplug the cable, they physically unplug themselves from the internet, just because there are giant money that they have to pay for each hour of stop of production. So it's impossible to think about to stop the OT production. So they unplug themselves. And when they have finished that kind of production or specific production, they have to replug the cable and then to do the synchronization from the plant to the headquarters and the plant with the other plants, and it's really a nightmare. It's really a nightmare. They use more time to do the synchronization than the time that they used to do the production. It's crazy. So they concern are thief of the secret receipts, of course. They are under patents, and they are very important for all of them. It's the core for all of these guys, and also the production stoppage. So how to prevent all of them, giving to them the opportunity not to unplug the cable, but to do the normal job in the normal way that we can use inside a huge company like this one is. And we have done it in a very simple way, just because all the IoT insist on a private network, but before and after, they have a touch point with the other network, just because they have to take the command, for example, from a SCADA, or they have to send the data, or they have to take the receipt, the secret receipt from the servers. So just putting an Invisinet in front of the OT platform and another Invisinet in front of the servers that they are allowed to talk with the OT, they have to talk with the OT, is very simple. They are completely invisible for anyone inside the boundaries and outside of the boundaries. Just because it's important, in my opinion, to think about another stuff. Talking about a company that need to be served, that need to change their mind to serve and to protect the very important stuff, it's important to understand, first of all, which are the very important stuff. Because if you talk with a bank, for example, yes, it's a nice idea to tell to the bank, take the whole bank, take the all offices and put them out of the radar. Okay, but it's huge. It's huge to do. And then sometimes it's better to start with a low perimeter, like in this case we have, to put under control and then to put out of the radar the very important stuff that they have inside the company itself. In this case, the OT and the servers of the receipt. After that they have tried it, and after that they see, thank you, Dana, on the server, on the CM, that no one else is able to find to reach the OT at the other servers, they probably decide to cover all the boundaries, all the whole companies, step by step. This is very important. And this other one, okay, I put the speed mode. This is another very important use case, because we are talking about the defense sector, and then we are talking about the guys that are part of our freedom, and in my opinion they are very important. And in this specific case we have covered the cameras, because the cameras and IoT in general, because in this case we have multiple locations in every country, as you can imagine, and they use tons of IoT and tons of camera. And the concern are the lateral movement entering through an IoT or entering through a camera. The bad guys can enter and can compromise larger perimeters. So in which way I can give only to the command sender the opportunity to see the streaming of the video, to command the cameras, to decide to switch on, switch off the cameras, without giving to the others the opportunity to find, to reach out the cameras themselves, just because the cameras for their own nature are the less defensive and the less defense. So we use Invisinet to Invisinet. Again, it's very simple. We put an Invisinet in front of the cameras, or in front a number of cameras that insist on the same private network, and another Invisinet to the command center, or another Invisinet or another Invisinet to the server that have critical data. So in this case, using military-grade micro-segmentation in a very simple way, we are able to cover completely them. And when I say to cover, I say host down, as I showed you before. This is the only way that you have to cover IoT and the OT device. In my opinion, because I master with my team all the technologies that are around all the hardware, all the software, this is the best in class. This is the only way. It's very, very easy to deploy this kind of stuff. And you don't have to change anything inside the network to use this kind of stuff. It's huge. And then take it in consideration. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Max. Really appreciate that. And those are great use cases that we bump into every day. But just to quickly go back to critical infrastructure, and Steve and certainly Max touched on this. Yeah, is it important right now to protect personal information for companies? Absolutely. And we've really focused that, especially in IT, on making sure that that information, banking records, healthcare information, things like that, don't get out into the public domain. However, when we talk about critical infrastructure, it's a different story. We're not talking about the exfiltration of information anymore. What we're talking about is cyber physical attacks, where you have a hacker with the ability to actually go in and make a change to a physical device, whether it be a valve or a pump or a production line. That's a big deal. Steve referenced earlier a water treatment center down in Florida, and it was truly scary. So you had someone using a standard internet connection going in to actually change a valve for the lye product that was introduced into that treatment. If it hadn't been for someone just casually passing by and seeing that those levels were spiking, it could have been a really big problem. So we're not talking just about, oh, someone's information leaked. We're talking about the safety, especially when it comes to water and other critical infrastructure, the safety of hundreds, thousands, millions of people. So when Max says that Invisinet is important, it is. And Invisinet, what we do, being able to create a virtual air gap, to be able to connect networks that normally you wouldn't want touching, but now you can. So one of the things that we get asked a lot is, especially around critical infrastructure and industrial controls, is how does that work? And give me a use case for that. One that has come up more than we thought, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize this as much, but came to us from a company that does process analytics, meaning they have either spectroscopy equipment or any other analytical equipment on a customer's manufacturing production floor, right? And they're taking measurements at each stage in the process. Or it could be, as we see right here, an oil rig. So these companies and the manufacturers want to be able to update those systems, right? Update software, as well as get critical performance information. However, now, what they have to do is actually go and request that a port be opened, right? So because those devices are on a customer network, and as you can see, it goes back to their IT departments in many cases, they are terrified to open up those ports, as well they should be. With Invisinet, you can think of it as a hallway to where you give each OEM access to their specific device. And mind you, as Steve and Max had mentioned, this is based on identity. So they get access to their specific devices without being able to see anything else. And more importantly, not being able to go back and touch or compromise the customer's network. So the customer still maintains control over everything, but the OEMs can actually perform those critical patches or updates that they need to make sure that those that plant equipment is up and going. So I'll stop with that. But one of the things, and by the way, I know we're short on time, so I'm going to go through this quickly, but we do get several questions and they all seem to fit in the same buckets. So, and I'm going to ask Max to explain this, but you know, one of the things we're asked is, how are we different from a firewall? So, Max, if you want to take that.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. We are completely different from a firewall. We are the firewall of the firewall. I'm kidding, of course, but it's completely different just because Invisinet does first packet authentication. It's completely different. As I showed you before, it's impossible to arrive to grab information. This is the difference. With the firewall, I give you the opportunity to find my company, and then I try not to let you enter if you are not allowed to enter in my place. Using Invisinet, it's a completely different view because it's a military grade view. If you are part of the protected enclave, you are allowed to find me. I do only first packet authentication. If you are not allowed, you are not able to find me. And if you are not able to find me, you are not able to attack me. It's completely different. And moreover, just because we are doing a first packet authentication, Invisinet does first packet authentication, this does mean that it's Boolean, yes or no. It's very, very simple. And just because it's the first packet authentication, again, there are no latency. And you don't give to the others the opportunity to arrive and to put under pressure the firewall. It's a completely different way to think about the cybersecurity. I stopped myself because we have another minute and stop.
Thanks. And so I think we're going to move on. But that being said, you see the questions. We certainly have the answers to those. And we would certainly like to talk. So Steve, I'll hand it over to you for closing remarks.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Dana. Thank you, Max. And indeed, let me just wrap up by just kind of summarizing what we've covered here. First of all, we've spent time talking about the problem associated with vulnerabilities of the most commonly deployed protocol in the world, TCP. We've talked, thanks to Max, about how hackers exploit that vulnerability. And we've introduced an entirely new zero trust technology that uses identity in order to make network scanning an authorized function. And this is done through the use of first packet authentication that can now shrink the attack surface in spite of the remarkable growth that we're seeing in networking globally. And finally, we reviewed how and where the software can be deployed to enable this new way of preventing attacks. Let me say thank you again for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out to us. You see contact information here. We're happy to arrange a demonstration and talk about the specific use cases that you might have in mind. We look forward to having an opportunity to connect with each of you individually. Dana, thank you for being a fantastic moderator. And Max, thank you. Your input has been incredibly insightful. Thank you again all for joining. Bye for now.
Take care, everybody. Look forward to hearing from you. Max, Steve, thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks, everyone.